and welcome to Jung at Harp. Today we are going to talk about being renewed by the transformation of our mind, or being transformed by the renewal of our mind. I'm Deborah Henson-Conant, and this is Kathleen Wiley, and this is called Jung at Harp. I'm a composer and a performer who plays the harp. Kathleen Wiley is a Jungian psychoanalyst who plays the harp. And we are going to talk about ideas and concepts and music, and often from the perspective of Carl Jung, which I know nothing about, but Kathleen does.
But what we both know something about through our own disciplines and through our personal life and our struggles and our successes is that sometimes when we want something to transform, our mind has to change. Something has to be renewed.
Right. And that something is often me.
Absolutely. It's always, for me, it's me, for you, it's you, and for whoever's watching, it's you.
Right.
We are the vessel and the subject of the work of transformation.
And you know what? I forgot to put us on Facebook. So
Okay.
I'm going to... shall we start? No, I'm not going to start again. We're going to be as it is, and we'll just go on Facebook. How does that sound? It's totally imperfect. And why don't you, you had given me a quote earlier. So while I'm putting us on Facebook, do you want to share that quote?
Yes. And this, for those of you who may have grown up as students of the Judeo-Christian scriptures, there's a verse in the book of Romans that says, "Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind." And I have been pondering that because I'm doing some writing about the alchemical processes that are symbolic of what happens as we individuate, meaning we begin to be able to live more from the fullness of our psyche soul and not just historical experiences and adaptive patterns we've learned from them. So in terms of, this applies in all areas of our life. And in DHC, you work so well in the Hip Harp Academy with helping people begin to look at their mindset and what in our mindset limits us, whether it's limiting us with what we want to express at the heart, it's limiting us with how we want to relate to our partner, it's limiting us in how we want to take care of ourselves, limiting us in going for our dreams. I mean, mindset is so important. And we often get caught thinking, oh, it's all about something that happened out there. Oh, this happened to me and that's why I can't do this. Or this is happening now and that's why I can't do that. When, if we really ponder, be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind, not be transformed by shifting out of world events. Not be transformed by changing your history, but be transformed by renewing your mind. Something shifts in our mindset, which I want to just say, I want to define as including both our intellect and our head and our reason and our logic and our heart and our desires and our passions and our longings and our gut with its sensations and its primitive emotion. Mindset isn't just about intellectual ideas. Mindset is about those three energy centers working together in harmony.
Well, I was thinking about that when you were talking. And by the way, for some reason, we can't get on Facebook. So yes, we'll put it on later. I was thinking about when you said the word mindset, and I was thinking, I've heard this word a lot, but what is being set, and in fact, I do often feel that I am set, as if I've been set in something. And then when you were talking about that connection between, our I think you said our spirit and our, or maybe you said our mind and our spirit and our gut. And
our intellect and our head,
our
intellect, our heart, and then our gut.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, when you want to make a plane, or when, not an airplane, but, to triangulate something, to set it, you often need those 3 points. And if those 3 points are all giving us the same information, like I'm just thinking, I've struggled for years with the abuse and neglect of my childhood, like I think many people have, like my parents did, like my grandparents did. I mean, this is intergenerational, it's conditional. My mother was a young single mother, and I ended up being, shipped off to other people, so it's not like it's anybody's fault. But when I think about where that's set in my mind, where that's set in me, and it's set in my thoughts and the patterns that I create, that I consider reality, in my heart, how I'm breathing into the world, and also in just my gut feelings. And if it's set in all those places, it's kind of set.
Yeah, it's what, again, Jung talks about it as a complex, which I like to say the synonym for complex is a feedback loop. So there's a feedback loop. Something gets activated in our gut, a body sensation, a kind of amorphous feeling. Then we have some thought or idea about it that often is in protection of some desire of our heart. And it sets in motion this series of automatic reactions. And we're doing things that we don't even realize we're doing. It's because we're just doing it. It's just automatic. It's not like we're really choosing it consciously.
Yeah, it almost sounds like something being said in into a certain chute that's going to go into a certain place. Like, okay, this happens this way. I was like, oh, that's yeah, okay, you're a victim. Great. Oh yeah, you're not good enough. Okay. Oh yeah, definitely not good enough. Almost like there's, we're just like shooting and reinforcing certain, and I experience them as shapes of experiential reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to hold that phrase, shapes of experiential reality. Yeah, it's like there's this whole field of little sparks of light that are the reality that somehow get formed through pressure, and sometimes just into distorted, ugly shapes, sometimes into very beautiful, forward moving shapes.
Describe a beautiful forward moving shape, one of them.
Well, I'll tell you what I was thinking about this morning with this meditation on be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. We have a new dog who, could make an appearance anytime. And we have this little puppy who is about 9.5 months old now. And so we got a trainer. And Gigi, our current little dog, is a rescue. My previous dog was also a rescue. And when I got Raven, my previous rescue dog, I had no idea what I was getting into. So for those of you who are watching, or if you've gotten a rescue dog, it's a totally different animal than a dog that somebody's raised from the time they were born. So when I got Raven, she was part Schipperke. And Schipperkes are known to be temperamental. They are miniature Australian sheepdogs that were bred to be guard dogs on the canal. So their nickname is Little Captain. That's what Schipperke means, Little Captain. Well, little did I know. And so for a number of reasons, which I'm happy to talk about, but I don't know that they're necessarily important to talk about. My way of interacting with Raven and nurturing her little spirit to come out, because I saw that trauma in her eyes when I first got her. So when she started to come out, that little personality, I wanted to nurture that. Well, in the process, I let her be the little captain. And all her life, when we would go for a walk, she would walk me. I didn't walk her. She would be out front, and I would be working hard to keep up. Well, I want to do it differently this go around, because I know that's really not good leash habits. It's not good for the dog. It's not good for me. I really do need to be the little captain. And so this morning when Gigi and I were out walking with her right beside my pants, seem like you're supposed to when they're on leash and healing. And it was just feeling so good to be in that flow. It's like we were moving together. And she and I've had this experience now a handful of times, and it's just effortless. It's like flowing water. And it occurred to me this morning that part of what had to shift in my mindset in order for her and I to have that experience is I had to give up the erroneous idea that in order to nurture the instinctive spirit, I had to let it be in charge.
Oh, wow. So that redefines the idea of relationship, that the relationship, uh-huh.
Yeah, because I erroneously thought with Raven that in order to help her feel safe and in order to not temper her instinctive self, her natural self from being out in the world, I had to let her be the little captain. And that really isn't true. Really. And of
Yeah,
course, this has implications symbolically for my own work with myself and my instinctive nature.
well, and it's really interesting because it brings me to something. The word that came up as you were speaking was discipline and the
Mm-hmm.
power of discipline. And it made me think about something I'm struggling with, which is one of the things that I've been trying to do for years is simply keep track of my time. Now, I time plan all the time. I have a plan, of everything that's going to happen in the day, but I don't go back and I don't have the discipline of keeping track of what did I actually do. And while that may seem really free spirited, I'll sometimes come to the end of the day and just feel that I am lost, that
Mm-hmm.
I lost myself. And having this tiny discipline that would take almost no time reminds me of when you were talking about walking step in step with your new dog. And then I was thinking about how beautiful, and we may have talked about this years ago, how beautiful it is, leadership and fellowship, the power and the beauty of fellowship. When you feel when there's a great conductor and you're following together and you're feeling the flow and the swell of music together, when I'm dancing with somebody and my body is following and reading and feeling and seeing that movement, and it's a sense of connection and consciousness and connected consciousness.
Yes. Oh, that's such a beautiful connection to music with playing with the conductor leading or playing with other musicians in a jam where you're listening and you're tuning to what they're doing energetically and you're wanting to stay side by side. And that that mindset that we are moving together instead of um, one person always being the follower and one person always being the leader. It's like dancing. If you're dancing with a partner and you're doing ballroom dancing, you tune in to each other's subtle movements. So sometimes the leader really follows the follower in order to keep leading.
Right. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, what happens when we're not connected in that way is an experience of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also thinking, going back to the strings of passion, which is the 7 strings of creative resonance, which kind of are the foundation of my work and my school. And the first string is the string of impulse. When we have an impulse to reach, to touch, to do, to play. And after a couple of years of teaching this, I began to realize that when we reach and touch, it is because we have been touched.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that this morning because my journey as a musician started, I'm sure, before I was born. But one really important, powerful moment for me was when I was 10 and I heard Debussy's La Mer. And I had it wasn't a recording, it was on the radio. I had no idea how I'd ever hear it again. And all I cared about is how I could get as close as possible to this piece that was moving me and remember the name so I might find it again. And those were the two things that my parents came home and my head was stuck underneath the stereo and I was sobbing. And I remember how can I get closer, closer, closer to this? Um, and this morning, I don't really listen to that piece anymore, but this morning I decided to listen to it again. And as I listened, I could hear all kinds of influences that have influenced my whole life, just in terms of musical shapes and stuff like that. So why am I saying this? Oh, I'm saying this because in isolation, not only are we, and of this is so true for me right now, we're not being touched by the touch that makes us want to touch.
Mm.
And that's, for me, that's what inspiration is. And it's also the power of fellowship. Any great leader is following
Yes.
something deep inside themselves. And I think we've been talking over the past weeks about the, when I've, come from a history of abuse and neglect, and, whatever I've made of it and what I've created out of it, that's what I'm following. I'm following that pattern to put life into those shapes so that I will feel like I'm connected to life. And you're talking about, I think what you're talking about is transformation by looking to be touched by something else.
Yes, by looking to be touched by something else. And I would like to say, I think first looking to be touched by our own soul, because our soul, and we talked about this 2 or 3 times ago, our soul print is so much bigger and limitless than our adaptive self print or the historical self print. The soul print, it is so much larger. And so looking to follow the soul, your soul was touched. I had an image of you with your head stuck up under the stereo. And I was imagining a neighbor of ours recently gave John an old Victrola that plays the 78 records. And that was the image that came to my mind for it, was your head stuck there trying to, how is that in the box, And that somewhere it touched your soul.
Right.
And you have been able to form a life for yourself as a musician, composer, performer, entertainer, coach, mentor, that's allowed your soul to flow into that form. And perhaps there are other forms you've wanted your soul to flow into that haven't, because those forms haven't been there.
Well, it's interesting when you said touched, and I thought awakened. Yes, I was awakened. And it reminds me of a workshop I was in recently called Untangle. And one of the premises of the workshop, it kind of goes back to fairy tales. And in so many fairy tales, well, in two, but two important ones, Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, and maybe others, the heroine, whoever you is frozen and needs to be awakened. Ourselves need to be awakened, and not necessarily by a prince, but whatever we're awakened by, maybe even ourselves. And what I'm hearing you say is that there may be many facets of that Snow White of me that is, in suspended animation. That fullness of me needs to be awakened.
Yes. And I remember you're telling the story about when you were playing in a jazz quartet and you would be sitting there playing, and that you get really nice applause, and then the saxophone player would get this and you wanted some of that. And so you broke out of the form of just sitting behind your pedal harp, and you stood up and you did this kind of more dramatic thing, and you got the yay. I mean,
Right.
that's an example of a very mundane example of be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Something shifted in your image of how you could play the harp, of course. And then we know you went on to work with Comac to develop the DHC Light.
Right, but I mean that's a really interesting point, because what happened, and I want to think about it, because what happened in that moment is I was playing the harp the way you play a harp. I was doing my thing, and I would make complex things or whatever, and I was sitting there and doing that as my solo. And then I noticed these guys were getting far more applause than me, and that people were often didn't even seem to register I just did a solo, but they registered that the guitarist did a solo, and they registered that the percussionist did a solo. And so I started looking almost as if I were deaf. Get that part out, get the part out that talks about what what I thought I was doing, and just observe. And I noticed that the guitarist would move forward, and would have a lot more action when he was soloing. And in particular, the percussionist would move into the mic and sweat like heck and just be like beating this thing. And so I just looked at it and I was like, what would happen if I just engaged those physical things? How could I lean forward? How could I do a lot of movement? What would that mean? And so literally the next day, we were in the solo, and I'll never forget, it was in Sunfest in Florida, and time for my solo, I stand up, I lean the harp forward, I lean into it, and I just go, bah, 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 bah. I'm not even playing harp music. I'm just like, and this woman in the front row raises her hands and she says, "You are a goddess." And what I love, it was wonderful because it helped me realize, okay, and now I need to take that thing that registers to the audience and now turn it into something that really is meaningful for me, and will give them more, but that was my job, but at least that was my to awakening that part of myself. So I'm assuming that you brought it up now because there may be other ways in to awaken myself that I haven't discovered yet. And maybe it's because I haven't been observing others and I think it's really important, because compare and despair, comparing yourself and judging yourself will just push you down. But in this case, I was comparing and observing and curious. I was still looking at what they did, but then I was like, how could I take that and do that in my way? How could I take the beauty and joy and fun of that and do that in my own way? So,
Yeah, and in that case, you weren't looking and comparing and cutting yourself down and making yourself less than. You were looking with a discerning eye to differentiate what you were doing and what they were doing,
right.
with that curiosity of the different effect it was having.
And it's interesting because I say this to my students all the time, because we're a big part of the academy is that they share stuff each week, and then we go over it, and we go over it in class. And a lot of times in the beginning, students are like, "Oh no, not me! I don't want to do that." And then the minute they see it happening, they're like, "No, me, yes, me, do that to me," because one of the things that I insist is that when students are looking at others' work, they are looking for what they love. Look for what you love, and then find at least one thing that you love, no matter what. And that tends to shut off our critical brain to ourselves and others. And then I'm always saying to them, what did you see here that you can take to the bank? Meaning, what did you see in this person's work that you can apply to your work, that's going to open your work up? And that is going to be true whether a longtime classical player is looking at someone who's just started as an adult after retirement, or whether it's in the other direction. You're going to be able to see if your brain is open that way. So I think what you're telling me is to start applying that principle in my life. And I think that takes us back to your original quote. Could you repeat that quote?
Yeah, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That we are awakened. I mean, that is a part of the process. And if we're lucky, we continue to awaken to parts of ourselves until we leave our physical body. I think that this is the difference between an 85-year-old. We have an 85-year-old friend who is still as alive as we are, mowing 2.5 acres, and the 85-year-old who just sits all day in front of the TV in despair and depression. He is still, my 85-year-old friend is still very alive to the world and to accessing parts of himself and things that give joy. So, yes, I hope we awaken until the time it really does come for our spirit to say, I don't need the body anymore. That's not, and that is not a Western mindset about aging. And I want to circle back for a minute, because when you stood up at the harp and did what I'm imagining were probably a lot of glissandos that night,
That's all it was. Yeah.
yeah, then you broke out of the collective mindset of how you're supposed to play the harp and what you're supposed to do on the harp as an instrument. What you're supposed, you broke out of a lot of collective mindsets. So all of us have to break out of the collective mindsets, whether we learned them in our family growing up or because they're a part of the larger collective, like harp teachers, harp history, or they're a part of a history of, whatever. And so I'm aging. My 85-year-old friend, who is as energetic as I am, has broken out of the collective mindset that aging means you get decrepit and can't do anything. We have to break out of those mindsets. And when we do that, something is transformed. We are awakened to a whole new world.
Right. I mean, as you're saying this, I just realized as we break out, we are renewing. I kept thinking of the word renewal when you were talking about your neighbor, that as we get to same with my portraits is being fixed or my harps that are being fixed, they can be renewed. It's going to get a new base. It's not going to have its old base. There's going to be renewal.
Right.
But and I want to also go back and say that in the moment when I shifted that playing thing, I had to break out of my own mindset, and that was a mindset of having to prove myself. And I was playing things that were hard to play because I wanted to prove myself to myself. When I did this thing, stood up, and it was the easiest thing in the world. Any non-harpist could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a shift for me, to be just allowing the joy of that instrument, not how good I could play it, but the pure joy of the instrument itself. And then go searching for other ways, to spend my life looking for other ways that I love and that are interesting.
Yeah.
So, thinking about your neighbor, and I'm thinking about renewal, and renew yourself. Or I'll ask you to send me the quote, because it keeps going different in my brain. This transformation, renewal, breaking our own. Now I lost my piece of paper. Oh, breaking my own mindset of proving myself. All right, let's have an exercise.
Okay.
Oh, and discipline, and and the beauty of, and the support, that what I hear about the dog, and you, the dog walking along beside you, was that the dog feels support and connection and can identify you as a leader as well as a partner when you are connected when you're in the discipline of walking together. So I wish to have that discipline in the walking of myself with myself in my life.
Yes. I'm laughing because I feel that too. I want to say for a minute about discipline. Whenever I hear the word discipline, I always think of that the discipline is being a disciple unto ourselves. And that the discipline that I want, the discipline you want with your schedule, for instance, and your time, is you want to be a disciple unto yourself. You want to follow what it is your head, heart, and gut aligned, what your larger soul mind, if we want to use that word, your soul mind, what the soul wants. And that when we can have discipline and following that and keeping our eye and our ears and all of our senses on what's the thread we're following here. And the thread that I want to say is worth following is the thread of one's soul, the larger self, where gut, head, and heart are working together. And where that isn't happening, instead of beating ourselves up, let's do exactly what you did that night on stage. And let's be curious. And let's look and see, okay, what's the head doing here? What's the gut doing? What's the heart doing? Okay. And where is my larger soul, that still small voice inside me of guidance? Just like you looked at the guitar player and the percussionist and what you did. And you thought, okay, what are they doing? And the soul was wanting that same kind of interaction with the audience, that same kind of feedback with them. And that, we might say, was the soul's longing in that moment. So my exercise would be, we have to bring a curiosity to the places where we aren't in discipline with ourselves. Or let me say it differently. Bring a curiosity to the places where something keeps happening that you want to be different.
So what would that look like? Like I've got my timekeeping page here, like I've planned the week.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to like check in every hour and say what I actually did. But I'm just like, I have to do that. Or, oh, I forgot. Or,
well, I guess I would say we have to look at, are you not doing that because you're going to judge yourself? You're going to feel ashamed. You're going to feel like a failure.
oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Right. Because my guess is that's why you're not doing it, because you would immediately size yourself up short versus what you did that night on stage, which is you were curious. You weren't sizing yourself up as short. You knew you were doing fantastic work on the harp.
Well, I don't know, but yes. Okay. Let's say I did.
Let's say it. I mean, you were confident you were doing.
I knew that I was competent. Yeah.
And so maybe that's what's got to be brought to how you move through your day, is some sense that, you know what, I really am very effective. I use my time well. And compared to the average person, I really do get a lot done in the day.
You know, it's really funny. I suppose I could do what I tell my students to do. No matter what I think I just did, I can find something to love in it. And I can say, you know, here's what was great about that.
Yes. And you know what I learned years ago to do, because my to-do list is always longer than the time. And one of the things that I started doing at the end of the day when I would get hard on myself that, oh, nothing on the to-do list got checked off, is I would make a list of all the things I did do.
Right. Yeah.
And what I realized is, okay, maybe these 5 things over here didn't get done, but these 8 things over here that also needed to be done and had value got done. So I think sometimes the discipline, the being a disciple unto ourselves, means also broadening our picture of ourselves. That mindset, the renewal of our mind, that somehow we have to realize, okay, you've got your schedule for the day, but there's also a schedule that the mystery has. There's an agenda. And so you may have this 30 minutes marked off to do internet work, but all of a sudden the repairman shows up when you weren't expected, or all of a sudden you're getting an important phone call you need to take, you know, or all of a sudden something else happens that needs immediate attention. I think sometimes we need to track what we have done in order to have the discernment, the differentiation. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to go to your calendar and immediately feel ashamed and guilty and like a failure, you're not going to do it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that I might enjoy the curiosity of connecting to my calendar, finding something to love about what I just did. So support what I did. And maybe, I'm a little scared about this, but maybe even making a poem of the day. Meaning, as I check in, try to say something very positive about what I just experienced, whatever it was, but in a poetic way, meaning it doesn't have to make sense. And then see what happens when I read that through the day. And maybe allow the negative voice to have voice on the other side, maybe to just see what that looks like. And I would be very curious to see what is the voice that's keeping me in the box saying, and what would the voice of complete love, like all it has is love. It has to love everything. It could be whatever it sees, it has to, that's all it has. what would that voice be saying?
Yes.
And what would that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that is a great exercise. And whoever's watching can adapt that to whatever it is you're struggling with that you want to be different. I think
Oh, the entrance of she who has been named before, or he who has been.
she's going to check up the rest of the You're going to come up and say hello to DHC?
Oh,
Can you see her?
I have to not talk. I have to put you guys in the spotlight.
This is little Gigi. Hello. Oh, yes.
Well, I won't bring my cats in because they would be just like, dog. Ugh.
Yeah, I think your cat made the appearance last time. And there was this wonderful moment where your cat was in your lap and her tail was up around your neck. I loved it. I thought, oh, you have on a fur collar today.
Right. It's just so, it's amazing to live with animals and to experience the power of their personalities in, regardless of what size they are or what mood they are, just how full of themselves they are. And to, hope that I too may be as, filled with being who I am and sharing that at some point. Well, so this is great. I mean, I am so excited that I came out of this with a way to address a discipline issue. And at some point, I would like to actually look at that word disciple and discipline, because I don't really know the difference between a disciple and apostle and a, discipline but so that would be very interesting and where those fit in our lives.
Oh, that's a great idea.
As we become disciples of our, as you said, disciples of our own heart.
Yes, disciples of ourself, disciples of our own soul, that we're called to follow our soul, that spirit of the divine mystery in us. That's the discipline we want. And everything else is really a tool to support that. But sometimes the tool becomes the God and the end goal instead of being a disciple to oneself. So the calendar for you needs to be a tool.
I see. That needs to be the tool, right?
Not the God, so to speak, not what it is you're trying to follow.
Not the leader.
Right, not the leader. Yeah, not the little captain. You get to be the little captain.
Right. Or my soul. I get to look to my soul.
Or that's right. The soul's the little captain. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kathleen, once again, what a pleasure. I just look forward to this every week. I really loved getting to talk about this today. And I'm sorry we weren't able to get on Facebook, but that's fine. That's how it was. I'll put it up there and I'll get it on YouTube as soon as I can. Thank you so much. And I can't wait till we connect again next week.
Terrific. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Visit jungatharp.com for show notes, contact links, and to follow the ongoing conversation. That's Jung, as in Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, and harp, as in the many-stringed instrument.